everyone, welcome back to another episode of Inner Peace, Better Health. I'm your host Avik, and today we are diving into a conversation that so many people need to hear, but often don't know how to start. So, if you have ever been a caregiver or are like one right now, you know the deep love and purpose it can bring, right? But you also know the exhaustion, the overwhelm, and the silent grief that comes with constantly putting others before yourself. So the question is, how do you set the boundaries when your role is built around selflessness? And also, like, how do you find your own identity outside of caregiving? And when life throws you a reality you never expected. So, how do you accept your new normal? I know it's a lot of questions, but I'll not keep you much round the robin. But uh, joining me today is Lynette Weldon. So, welcome to the show, Lynette.
Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody.
Lovely, lovely. So, before we start, I'll quickly love to introduce you to all the listeners. Dear listeners, Lynette is a powerhouse in the world of caregiving advocacy and mental wellness. So, with over 35 years of personal experience and the 2 decades of coaching others through caregiver burnout, grief, and the emotional exhaustion. So she has been there. So she's navigated the highs and the devastating lows, including the loss of her husband to suicide and the challenges of raising a child with special needs and the chronic illness. So, but through it all, she discovered something powerful. Caregivers deserve care too. Yes. So I'll not take much of your time. So welcome to the show again, Lynette. And I can already tell that this conversation is going to be a life changing. Welcome to the show again.
Thank you.
Great, great. So Lynette, caregiving is often painted as kind of act of pure love. And while that's true, there's another side of it that really gets talked about, the cost of always saying yes. So when did you first realize that constantly giving to others was kind of taking something from you?
When you're thrown into the role of a caregiver, you just kind of put your head down and power through, and you don't realize everything that you're doing. It just kind of becomes your new normal. And so I think that I recognized that I couldn't continue like this when I was so exhausted and depleted. It was hard to even think straight, right? And if you think about, you know, how you feel as a parent or a caregiver, you want to give everything that you possibly can to that person to do the best job that you can in that role as a caregiver. But, you have to take a step back and start to take care of yourself too. Because if you don't, you're going to get to the point where you are so exhausted that you can't even get out of bed. And so it's just learning to look at it differently. And self care, it really has a ripple effect. When you take care of yourself, you're more present, you're stronger, you feel better, and you have more to offer then when you are caring for the person that you're caring for. And so just really learning to recognize that in order to provide good care, you also have to take care of yourself. And sometimes that is really difficult for them to recognize because they look at it and feel guilty for taking any time for themselves.
That's amazing, I have to say. And also, how did that moment shift your perspective on setting the boundaries? Uh, that's so important. I feel, if you can share.
Yeah, boundaries are really important because when you are constantly saying yes to everybody else, you're saying no to yourself.
Mhm.
And in order for you to be able to have some time to care for yourself, you have to learn how to set boundaries. And I think that when you're in this position, everybody expects you to do everything all the time, right? And it's hard a lot of times for people, to set those boundaries or to say no. And it's just learning to shift your mindset around it. And also, kind of learning how to say no in a more compassionate way instead of just saying, no, I can't do that. Or, it's learning how to say maybe, um, thank you for asking me to do that. I'm glad you thought about me. I really can at this time, but keep me in mind for next time. And then, the other thing I tell my clients to do is when you're asked to do something, just pause for a minute and really think about, do you really have the time to do this? How is it going to affect you? And, can you say no? And before responding right away.
Yeah, I agree on this. And I mean, I have to say here, like, it's so powerful to hear you say that. I mean, I think a lot of caregivers struggle with that guilt that when they even think about prioritizing themselves, it's too.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. So also, like you have spoken about how life can change on a dime, and
Uh-huh.
for so many caregivers, that sudden shift can feel like a kind of identity crisis. So
Yeah.
I mean, one day you are living one reality, and the next day you are in survival mode. So
Mhm.
navigating a world you never saw coming. I mean, how did you personally come to the terms with your new normal?
Um, well, you're really right about that because most often when you are a caregiver, you didn't plan on being a caregiver. You might have had a child that was born with a disability or a diagnosis or a spouse that now, maybe has cancer or something like that. And so your whole world really does change immediately. And I think the biggest thing for people to keep in mind is that there's a grieving process that happens, you know? I don't know if anybody has ever read that poem, Welcome to Holland, but Emily, Pearl Kingsley wrote it, and it talks about how you plan to go on a trip to Italy, and you end up in Holland, and you're like, "Wait a minute, this is not where I'm supposed to be." And it's just allowing yourself to feel all the feelings that come with that, and, we typically hide it as caregivers because we feel like, how dare us feel that way? Why are we grieving about our life when they are struggling so much? And I think that is really the first step in recognizing that, your life has changed. But on the other end of that, it's learning how to navigate it and change your expectations about how your life was supposed to be because there's still great things that can come out of this on this journey. And you tend to lose yourself, you lose your identity in all of it. And it's just looking at the positives in it and just really changing your mindset. I know I said that earlier, but it's looking at things differently, asking yourself different questions.
Exactly, that's very, very true. And also, like, what advice do you have for someone who is currently stuck in the this wasn't supposed to be my life mindset? So, what do you say?
I would say to first off, recognize the sadness or the anger or the resentment that you have around this and then know that that is perfectly normal. That's a normal human emotion. And accept that your life isn't going to be the same, but you can still have some of the things that you had before. You can still be a person outside of your role as a caregiver. And it's, remembering things that used to make you happy, things that used to fill you up, and, trying to implement. You might not be able to do all of it, but find the things that you can do and start to implement some of those into your life again, and learn how to ask for help and support so that you do have time for you, so that you can remember who you were before this all started.
Exactly. Ah, I mean, that's so important reminder. I mean, grief isn't about just about losing a person, but it's all about losing the life that you thought you have. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes like we have to grieve that the version of ourselves before we can move forward. So that is also something. Ah, so one thing that doesn't get talked about enough is the grief caregivers carry. I mean, not just over loss, but over life they have sacrificed, the dreams they have put on hold or never thought of, and uh, uh, I mean, quite moments of resentment they feel, but are kind of what to say, like uh, afraid to admit. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so on this, like, why do you think that so many caregivers struggle to acknowledge their grief?
Um, I think it's fear of other people judging them, for one. And there's a lot of guilt that they feel for feeling those things. I just did a workshop on guilty caregiver syndrome, and they're so hard on themselves, and they feel like they just have to, kind of push through everything, all the responsibilities and all the feelings. And um, if they do acknowledge how they really feel, then that guilt takes over. And so I think that they feel like they have to hide it. And, they don't want to be looked at like um, selfish, or they're not doing a good enough job. It's sad because they are so hard on themselves. And, when that's when the burnout cycle really, starts, because they just keep pushing through and they hold everything in.
Yeah, totally agree on this. Yeah. I mean, like also one thing that for those who are afraid to voice those feelings or
Mhm.
knowingly suppress those feelings, whether it's anger, frustration, or even regret, what did you say to them?
Um, I would tell them to, first of all, it's a normal human emotion, and there's nothing wrong with them or the way that they feel, right? And to, when they're starting to feel that way, to just really, stop and acknowledge how they feel, and ask themselves, why am I feeling this way right now? And really kinda get to the bottom of those feelings, and that's the only way that you can work through it, is just to acknowledge it and then accept that that's how you feel, and that it's perfectly okay, and it doesn't mean that you don't care enough, or you don't love enough, or you don't give enough care. Um, and if you don't start to work through some of that and acknowledge that those feelings are okay to feel, you're gonna be stuck in that cycle forever, right?
Exactly. I agree. And so, one of the biggest challenges that caregivers face as well is figuring out who they are outside of their role.
Mhm.
Um, it's so easy to lose yourself when you are entire. I mean, your entire existence revolves and uh, it revolves around someone else's needs or the requirements. Uh, so, how do you start the process of rediscovering yourself?
I have them do a couple different things, and one is to, start writing down who they were before they were thrown into the role of a caregiver, and what things did they used to do, and what things did they used to like to do that, calmed them down or made them happy or gave them energy, and to remember those things and then try to find things that they can do right now in their life to start to implement some of that again. So they start to remember who they are also outside of the role of a caregiver. And, that's really a great place for anybody who is struggling to start, because you can take 5, 10, 15 minutes here and there throughout your day to do some of those things. And when you feel good mentally, you start to feel a little better physically, and you show up, you're not depleted. You're not coming to that role as a caregiver with nothing to give. Um, when you start to fill up that reservoir again, you become a better caregiver because you're happy. And, it's like what I said earlier, that ripple effect. When you show up happy, it makes them happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if you can just uh, a bit of bifurcate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can bifurcate, like, I mean, I'm saying,
I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
yeah, I'm saying, like, if you can bifurcate, I mean, what you mentioned.
I'm not sure what you mean.
Okay, so I'm just saying, like, okay, so I'm just saying, like, on this, what will be the uh, primary or the first step that caregivers can take to reclaim their sense of self?
The first step for them
Yeah.
would just to start to remember who
Mm.
they were before they started this role,
Okay.
and try to find the pieces that used to make them happy,
Mm.
and then try to start to implement some of that into their life again.
Wow. Lovely. And I mean, I have to say, I mean, this is really an eye opener because um like caregivers don't just need a break, they need a life also beyond their role, because this is also their life. They have a life. And
Uh-huh.
yeah, I mean, uh, it will be I mean, and that's not a selfish, right? They are just doing their job, their work, because they love that, and they are, or maybe
Mhm.
they are just working on. But for them also, they need also space. And what do you say on this?
You know, you need your own time and you need space for you. And, that's where the boundaries are gonna come in, when you start to implement some boundaries. And because you can't have balance in your life and have any time for you outside this if you're constantly saying yes to everything and feeling like you have to do everything. So, it's getting stronger and knowing that it's okay for you to take time for yourself, and it's okay for you to say no when you need to. And, just recognizing that if you don't take care of you, you're not going to be able to take care of the person that you're caring for.
Yeah, understood. Great. So saying no can feel impossible for the caregivers. So whether it's to family, friends, or even person they are caring for, there's this kind of fear of letting people down. So how do you help caregivers reframe that idea of saying no as an act of self care rather than kind of an act of selfishness? So what do you
Mhm.
think?
Yeah. Um, it's learning to realize that you're putting yourself to, and you can sustain, and you're putting yourself in a position where you're never going to be able to attain what you think you should be able to do, right? If you think that you always have to do everything and you can't say no to somebody, you're going to be exhausted. So if a good example would be to just take a look at, a friend or somebody that you love, and they're going 100 miles a minute, 24/7, never ever pausing or taking time for themselves, but then they say to you, "Well, I have to do everything," or "I feel guilty if I take time for me," and you see how depleted they are, what would you say to them? They need to start looking at those, what they would say to the person that they love and giving themselves some self-compassion and saying the same thing to themselves. We don't expect somebody that we love to have to do everything all the time and, be so exhausted that they can't think straight. We want them to also take care of themselves because we love them. And so if we can, learn to look at our own situation the same way and have some more compassion for ourselves, that's when you can start to change that mind shift and those beliefs around that you have to do everything and be everything for everybody, and then that in turn will free up a little bit of time for you to take care of yourself.
Understood. Totally understood. Yeah. Lovely. So, that's really, really great. That's so powerful. And for everyone who is listening, if you are feeling drained, lost, or uh, like you don't even recognize yourself anymore, then please hear this. You are not alone. You matter. Your needs matter. And you deserve the same love and care that you so freely give to others. That's very important. And thank you so much, Lynette, for uh, sharing your perspective. It's really, really great, and you have been given a voice to the struggles that so many caregivers feel, but rarely talk about. That's a great one. And before we wrap up, like, what's the one message you'd like every caregiver listening right now to hear and truly believe?
That you matter too, and to show yourself the same love and compassion that you give so freely to everybody that you're caring for.
Uh huh. Okay. Lovely. That's great. Great. So, dear listeners, if this episode has resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear this. And remember that taking care of yourself isn't a selfish one, it's a survival. So, until next time, stay strong, stay kind to yourself, and keep searching for that inner peace. So, till then, thank you so much.